Hello, this is Mr. B, and we are going to learn how to play chess today. There's a lot going into chess, but we're going to try and go over objectives, basic rules, setting up the board, the different pieces, how they move, and then I'm going to briefly touch on a couple of the rules that do happen, but kind of rarely. Let's get started. The first objective of the game is to capture the king. When you capture the opponent's king, you win. Kings often look like these different shapes here depending on your board. They'll have that cross over their head, and they are the tallest piece on the board. Some basic rules of gameplay. There are two players. The white pieces go first, and you move one piece per turn, and then the turns will alternate between them. So the white will go first, then the black goes second, the white goes third, moving one piece each turn. If a piece lands on the location of the opponent's piece, you remove that opponent's piece from the board, capturing them. Here's an example. If I moved this piece from here to here, I would capture that black piece and remove it from the board. When you are in the position to attack the opponent's king, that is called putting him in check. If the opponent can, he or she must move the king, block the attack, or kill the attacker. All right. And if there is no way for the king to get out of the attack, it's called a checkmate, and then you win. When we first play the game, it's set up using these pieces. I'm going to briefly describe the pieces, and then in the next section I'll tell you how they move. But starting at the left, moving to the right, we have the king, the tallest piece. Then we have our queen, who is the best offensive piece or defensive piece, the strongest piece to attack and defend. We have next our bishop, and then the knight, which is shaped like a horse. Then you have the rook, which is shaped like a castle, and the smallest piece is called the pawn. When you're setting up the board, this is how you set it up. You have a row of pawns, 8 pawns, make up a row like that, and then starting on the outside moving in, we'll place the rook, the knight, the bishop, and then we place the queen on her own color. So the white queen would go on the lighter color square of the board. The black queen would go on the darker colored square. And the kings go opposite each other on the opposite colors. All right, white king on the dark space, black king on the light space. Now, the most complicated part of playing chess is figuring out how all the pieces move. So this will take a little bit of time, but we're going to go through all the pieces and how they move. Let's start with the king. The king is located right there, and the way the king moves is that he will move and attack one space in any direction. So if this king is standing right here, he can move to any of these locations, and his move will attack the place that he moves, replacing that piece or capturing the piece that he takes over. The king cannot move where he would be under attack. All right, so if there's a piece attacking any of those spots, the king would no longer be able to actually move to that place. The queen, queen is located here. The queen can move any number of spaces in any straight direction. So diagonal, left, right, up, down, the queen can move all around. All right? As long as it's open, the queen can get there. The queen cannot jump over other pieces. So remember from the beginning, when you land on a space that's occupied by another player, you capture that player. So if there was a player, the queen could no longer go past that. Let me show you some examples using this board here. So let's look at it and say, which pieces could the queen kill, or which pieces could the queen capture? Well, the queen could capture any of these pieces, only one on a turn, but the queen could move from here down to here and capture this piece. The queen could move over one space to the right and capture this one, or capture this one, could move in a straight line down to here, or a diagonal over to there. Those are all the pieces the queen could capture. All the places the queen could go is a little bit more than that. The queen can go in a straight line up and down. So the queen could go up all the way to there. The queen could go left. The queen can go down. So in an up, down, left, right pattern, these are all of the spaces the queen could go. The queen cannot go here because she can't jump over that piece to get there. Also cannot get past that piece or past there. So the queen can go to this space and capture that, one of these pawns, any of those spaces, or to the open spaces that are marked. On a diagonal, the queen can do all of those moves. All right, again, if it's open, she can go the full length of the board. If there's a piece there, she cannot go past that piece. The bishop is the next piece if we're moving out from the center. The bishop can move and attack any space diagonally. So similar to the queen, if it's an open board like this, the bishop can go all the way over in diagonals. Any number of spaces. Again, I mark these with arrows because the bishop can stop on this space, or can go all the way to the end. So the bishop can stop on any of those spaces that are marked. Again, the bishop cannot jump over other pieces. If it comes to a piece, it can capture that piece by taking the spot that it's on, or stay one space back, but it can't go past another piece jumping over it. Let's look, we're moving our way out when we get to the knights, those pieces that are shaped like horses. A knight can move in a kind of funny pattern. I think of it as shaped like the letter L. So you move one space in one direction, and then you go 90 degrees, 2 spaces. So notice that the knight could start here and end on this space. Okay? When the knight moves like that and hits that space, it can also do kind of an L shape in any direction. So I'm going to show you a couple of other L shapes. It could go up and then over to the right. It can go to the right and then down. It can go down and then to the left. And we can also turn things around and have it go to the left and then down, down and then to the right and up, or up and then to the left. So the knight can move in several different spaces like that. The difference with the knight and other pieces we've talked about so far is that the knight can jump over other pieces. It only attacks the space where it lands. So let's go to the next slide here. This is the way I think of the knight. Instead of thinking it in terms of L-shaped, I think of it in terms of attacking in a circle. It can attack any of these spaces here. All right, it can attack any of those spaces, and it can jump over any of the spaces that are uncovered. So it's not plowing through shapes like in an L shape. It's actually kind of jumping over and landing there. It attacks that space that it hits only, and jumps over anything else that is in its way. Now let's talk about the rook or the castle. The Rooks are located in the corners, and they can move in an up, down, left, right pattern, or in other words, in straight lines, not diagonals. So again, similar to the queen and the bishop, they cannot jump over pieces. They can only attack in straight lines. In this one, up, down, left, right, straight lines. And it can go as far as it can until it hits a piece, which it can either attack the piece or stay in any of the spaces before that. So for example, if there was a piece here, the rook could go to this spot, or capture the piece that was there, but then couldn't jump over that piece to continue on. Now let's look at the pawns. There are 8 pawns on each team, and the pawns are arguably the most complicated pieces because they move and attack differently. Okay, so let's talk about how they move first of all. Pawns move forward only. They usually move one space, but there is one exception to this. They can move 2 spaces forward from their start location only. So here's an example. This pawn can move forward 1 space or 2 spaces. This pawn can again move forward 1 space or 2 spaces because it's on its original starting point. So the black pawn here can move 1 space or 2 spaces because it's on its original starting location. This pawn, however, because it's not on the original start location, it can only move forward one space. So that's how that goes. The only time it can move forward 2 spaces is from its starting location. The other exception is the attacking. Pawns only attack on diagonals. So here are the attacks that could happen on this board. This white pawn could attack the black pawn. The black pawn could also attack the white pawn. I should have had an extra arrow there. They can attack because they're diagonal and forward of each other. So the white pawns are moving forward up the board. It can attack diagonally up. So this section in here, the white pawns can attack forward and up on a diagonal. Notice this white pawn can attack the black pawn. This white pawn could also attack the black pawn. The black pawn has the choice to attack either one of them. All right? Or it could just move forward into this open space and not attack either of them. But if it's going to attack, it has to attack on an angle. They also cannot move forward into an occupied space. So you see the example over here on the left where these two pawns are face to face, right? They can't move forward to attack each other. So the black pawn can't move forward to attack the white pawn. The white pawn cannot move forward to attack the black pawn. They can't move forward. All right? So let's just do a quick review. At the very beginning of a game, you can start by moving either your pawns forward 1 space or 2 spaces. Notice this, the pawns can move forward 1 or forward 2. That's it. Those are the only options for pawns on the first move. They can move forward 1 or forward 2. Or knights can move out. Because remember, knights can jump over pieces. So they can move in those L shapes to here or to here. Or the knight on the left could move up to this space or up to this space. That's the only moves you can do at the beginning of a game. Either moving your pawns out 1 space or 2 spaces or moving your knights. After your pawns move and you kind of unblock your bishops and your queen and your rooks, then you can start moving those pieces as well. Now I'm going to cover just a couple of quick rules that are a little bit more obscure. I'm going to do this a little bit quicker. I'm not going to go over every rule, but just some ones that come up a little bit more often. So if you want to check these out, of course, you can definitely check them out on that website. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is pawn promotion. If your pawn reaches the end, so it reaches your opponent's starting row, home row, then you can't move forward anymore. At this point, the pawn would be promoted. A pawn can be promoted to any piece except for a second king. Most people typically choose a queen. So I could then, at this point, replace the pawn with a queen, the move that it reaches that home row. So that's called pawn promotion. Another rule is called castling your king. This is a defensive move, and it also helps to get your rook a little bit more available. The move is this. You take your king and you move it 2 spaces sideways like this, and then your rook will cross over the king and come over to the other side. All right. If you do it on the king side, it would look like this, and then I showed you what it would look like on the queen side. That's a move called castling your king. Castling the king is kind of hard to do sometimes because you have to satisfy all of these 5 things. Your king can't have moved ever during the game. Your rook also cannot have moved. There must be no pieces between the king and the rook, and you can't move out of check. So you can't do that while you're in check. And the 5th one, while you're castling, you can't put your king into check. So that includes any of the spaces between where the king moves. So in this example, the king is going to try to castle, but if it moves from here over to here, look, the bishop is actually attacking that spot, so you cannot castle your king because it has to go through that space. So this is an example where you couldn't castle your king. You also can't castle your king on this side because this rook has moved, right? It's no longer on this space and it has moved. En passant is a French for in passing. This is a move that happens very rarely, but again, wanted to bring it up. If your pawn here chooses to go up 2 spaces instead of 1, on the turn when that pawn goes up and basically gets past this guy's attacking point, the black pawn can choose to attack where it would have been if it only moved 1 space, and then capture that pawn. So let me show you that again. En passant looks like this. If the pawn moves forward and these two are now next to each other, on the move that it does that, this pawn can move down and capture that, capture the white pawn. It can only be done on the move when the white pawn takes 2 spaces, and it can only be done by another pawn that's there. Okay, so this is a kind of a rare thing and has to meet some special qualifications. All right, let's talk about what happens if you don't win a game of chess. There's a draw or a stalemate. Real quick, a stalemate is if you cannot move your king or any other piece on the board. I've set up the board here in a stalemate situation. The black king cannot move, or he'll put himself into check. If he kills that pawn there or captures that pawn, he's in check by this rook. If he moves into this space, the rook would also have him in check. He can't move here, here, or here because the queen attacks on a diagonal and in a straight line. So the king is not in check right now, but cannot move because he would be in check. Also, the one other piece that is black on the board is a pawn, and the pawn cannot move forward into that space because of the bishop. So it's a stalemate. In other words, it's a tie or a draw because the king cannot move and no other piece on the board can move either. The king cannot move or he will be in check and no other piece can move. Another version of a tie is a draw. And a draw can happen in lots of different ways. I'll talk about 3 of them here real quick. If you both agree that it's a draw, you can call a game a draw. If you are just moving back and forth 3 times, each player moving the same piece, then you can call it as a draw as well. And there's this one that happens from time to time as a 50-move draw. If no pawns or pieces have been killed or exchanged for more than 50 moves, then you can call it as a draw. This usually happens if you have just the king left and you're basically getting out of being captured. So you're making it so that the opponent can't catch you, then you would call this a draw. It's a 50-move draw. It's sometimes called a 26-move draw because it's 50 total moves, but it would be 25 from each person. So once you make the 26th move of your own piece, then you could call it as a draw. Hope that video was helpful for you on how to play chess. Lots of the rules. I know it's a complicated game, so it's kind of a longer video than normal. But I hope that was helpful and quick, concise for you. Here are some other videos that you can enjoy on how to play other games. Have a wonderful day.